Hey everybody, this is PJ, and you're watching my speedrun of Battletoads Arcade with Rash, completed in 38:25. This is a 1 credit clear, that is, I don't continue if I run out of lives, completed on maximum difficulty. So that's difficulty 6 out of 6. Default difficulty settings are 4. And I show those settings at the very end of the video, so if you want to verify, you can go ahead and check that. So Rash is a really interesting character in this game. He's the speed character in a game where damage values are identical for every character. He's a really interesting compromise between Pimple and Zitz. So Pimple and Zitz are night and day. Their strats are completely different. Rash gets to use some of the best strats from Pimple and some of the best strats from Zitz. What makes him so good overall is that his animations are really fast, and his dash attack pushes him forward. So I went over a lot of the basics in the Pimple commentary, but in case some of you watching don't want to watch that video and you're not interested in reading a wall of text that I'll probably write somewhere, I'll give a real quick summary. That spike boot kick that I did with him is his smash attack. Well, the smash variation of his dash attack. Every attack in this game has just the standard attack animation and then the smash attack, which you get from attacking certain special enemies like these big grunties, or from hitting low health enemies. So these rats in particular have 1 health, so when you hit them with a dash attack you get the smash version. The standard dash attack kick is just a basic kick, which we'll probably see. Well, we saw there when I whiffed it. So that dash attack, the smash one, the spike boot thrust, it accelerates him forward super rapidly, which is the same property that Pimple's dash attack has, and it's extremely useful for doing several AI manipulations on some of these bosses. It's really good for chasing bosses and chasing enemies that have the special property that let you always attack with smash attacks. And it's really important for setting up efficient AI loops. So Rash is able to do that. And this this dash attack is a really short cooldown if you cancel it. So during the animation, I'd say about halfway through the animation, you can dash again, and you'll cancel the animation and immediately dash. For Pimple, you have to wait a really long time to cancel his animation, and with Zitz you can cancel it like instantly, like a quarter of a second after you do it. So Rash's cancel is not quite that fast, but it's incredibly fast, so he can cover a lot of ground. He's extremely mobile with this dash attack, and the hitbox is pretty good too. So that's the main thing that he has going for him, and just the fact that his movement speed is so high is really great. It works in his favor. So his dash attack is good. His aerial attack is not nearly as good as Pimple's, but it still has pretty favorable hitboxes and a pretty short recovery. And your aerial attack can really make or break a situation. There are very few places in the run where I actually rely on aerials to set up things. But if something goes awry, usually the only way you can get out of a bad situation is by using the aerial to zone. So again, I mentioned it in the Pimple commentary, but besides the basic dash attack, you have the aerial attack that I've been mentioning. You can do a dash attack to any grounded enemy to kick them, and the kicked enemy becomes a projectile that can hit additional enemies, like we're going to see here. There was a weak dash attack into a boot, into 2 boots, and that'll kill... well, the 3rd boot will kill them, because each projectile rat does the damage of 1 smash attack. So knocking down an enemy and then kicking them into other enemies is the primary way that you you group enemies together and control space, and it's just a really efficient DPS. And then besides that, if you walk over to a grounded enemy and press down and attack, you get the execute. With Pimple, that was the 10-ton stomp. With Rash, he just smashes their face with his claw. Zitz has a drill. So, yeah, now we see, oh, classic. We see a bit of the power of the spiked boot thrust and a bit of some of the trouble you can get yourself into. So, during the smash attacks, you are completely invincible until the attack ends, which is extremely critical for a lot of parts in this run. I rely on like the startup from the boot attack or from iframes during the spike boot thrust, especially during the Robo-Rat boss fight that we'll see next stage. Since you can cancel your smash attacks, your iframes instantly end. So I got crushed by that elf because I canceled my spiked boot thrust early. If I had just stayed in the kick animation, then I would have not taken any damage. So in that stage, we saw two of the three weapons in the game. We saw the other weapon in the first stage. So the explosive box in the first stage is really great. You throw it at things, it blows up and does a boatload of damage. The stick, you get 4 swings with it as long as they connect. That's the execute again. And the gun, you get 5 shots. Each shot fires 4 bullets, and it does a lot of damage. I don't actually know how much, but it does a huge amount. You always want to use the gun whenever you get it. So Karnath has 30 seconds of invincibility at the beginning of the fight, and every time you hit him, regardless of whether or not he takes damage, he accelerates up to a maximum speed. And on maximum difficulty, that maximum speed is after 13 hits. So I mentioned Pimple has to do some shenanigans with positioning to make sure that he doesn't get instantly killed. If Karnath hits you, he does 8 damage out of 10. And it's pretty brutal. With Rash, he doesn't have to do that because he can cancel his spiked boot thrust, so he can always reposition himself. One thing that I'm going to do is what you saw right there. If you hit Karnath very late after he strikes, like right before he pulls his head away, he gets a staggered hit, where his head lingers out a little bit longer and he won't target you for a little bit. Because of the way that his targeting works, it's pretty complicated to explain, but he will slowly drift right over the course of the fight, no matter what you do. He generally he'll pick wherever your character is located and strike there at certain points during his phase. And then there's a chance after that he'll misfire off to the right. So just as you continue to hit him, he's going to slowly drift right. And by doing those staggered hits, it delays his targeting, so I'm able to dash to the left once it gets too far to the right and reset his targeting over there. And if you don't do that, if you don't do the staggered hit, what you have to do is just wait for him to whiff once and reposition him that way. It's just slightly faster to use the staggered hit method. So Stage 3 is a really cool stage. Rash doesn't have a whole lot to worry about here. This is the most difficult stage for Zitz. Pimple has a pretty easy time here too. But there's a lot that can go wrong. This is where, I mean, we get to this point in the game where a single mistake can cost you an entire life. And if you're in a bad wave like this quad gold rat wave, a single mistake can oftentimes cost you an entire credit. But again, I just try and kick the rats around and not lose control of the wave. One thing that's really interesting and one thing that really appeals to me about this game is that all of the spawns are fixed in this game. I always know that out of this door, there are going to be 4 wrenchies, and their first steps are always going to be in the same direction. I know that here there's going to be a tall gonad walking from the left, and then a gray frazzle coming from the tube, and 2 gray frazzles here, followed by a red frazzle out of the right pipe. And so on and so forth. I could read through every enemy in the game, but that would get tiresome. But the point is, it allows me to... oh, unfortunate. Alright, I'll explain that in a bit. it allows me to basically pattern all of these waves. So I know, okay, so how am I going to handle this wave? Well, I'm going to grab this rat and throw him into the blue and gold rat. After that, I'm going to kick them, and then, depending on where the gold rat gets hit, I'm going to either knock him down again and then execute him, or just straight away execute him. So it makes it really fun to try and figure out the optimal way to clear these waves. And it also makes it really nerve-wracking, because if you screw up the first action in a wave, you oftentimes can't regain control. This game has really no mechanics in it that allow you to regain control besides memorizing the spawns. So if you screw up something at the beginning where you miss an attack, or an enemy is positioned just a few pixels off where you should be because of random ambling, then you're screwed. You're just completely screwed. And this Rash run isn't deathless. I don't remember where I died here, but it's bound to be a good one. Alright, so, these are the guns. The guns have a special property against these tall general vermins. You see I'm doing this jump strat. And the reason I'm doing that is because the gun fires 4 bullets, but on general vermin only the 4th bullet does damage. Quick side note, I don't know why this happens, but for these pink frazzles, if you throw one of the olive green frazzles at them as they're coming out of the door, they do bad things, and sometimes they vanish entirely, sometimes they go beneath the stage, and sometimes they get teleported off to the left. But the pink frazzles have a lot of health, so it's important to do that. Yeah, so the general vermins, they have special health. They take 1 damage from every attack, every aerial and every dash attack, regardless of whether it's a smash or a normal. And 1 damage from the stick. But they take 4 damage from a bullet and from the jab string. But only the last bullet does damage, and they counterattack after 2 hits. They have a long invincible counterattack, this kick here that we're going to see. So, if you take a gun to a general vermin battle, and you shoot them just on the ground, the first 2 non-damaging bullets are going to trigger a counterattack, and then the damaging bullet's going to fly through harmlessly. So what we have to do with Rash and Pimple is jump and miss 2 or 3 bullets, and then the damaging bullet will hit them. And we just repeat that whenever possible. When it's not possible and there's a single general vermin like that, it's always fastest to just chain dash attack into jab string so that they don't counterattack, but you still get maximum damage. You get 5 damage per loop. So this is a really scary part of the run. This is a frequent reset point. We have to take this gun, well, a gun from one of these guys, not necessarily this one, to the end of this screen, where there's another double general vermin wave, and the gun is the potential for 20 smash attacks worth of damage, which is a tremendous amount of damage. But it also means that we can't use any jabs, grabs, or aerials during those 2 waves. So if we get jabbed a single time, we are guaranteed to die. But everything worked out here. We got our 5 shots, and now we got literally pixel-perfect grouping on these 2 general vermin. And we're doing just the basic pimple loop here. A dash attack into a retreating aerial to trigger the counterattack, but land far enough away that they don't hit you. It's just an absolutely ingenious loop. And it only works that well for these 2. This is Robo-Rat. For the first phase, I use the same loop as Pimple. Just hit him twice. He counterattacks every... well, if you continuously hit him as quickly as you can, he will counterattack after 3 hits. He just counterattacks with increasing frequency as you continue to hit him. So we do a staggered strat that Pimple would use. We don't cancel as quickly as we can. Phase 2, we do cancel as quickly as we can. And as long as we don't whiff, General Vermin will counterattack 3 frames after we hit him, and our invincibility will end 1 frame after the hitbox for the laser goes away. So it's a really tiny window, and you have to time every single hit perfectly, or else bad things happen. Really sick hitbox on that kick. Really unfortunate. We want to kick as much scrap as we can at this phase because it does like 2.5 times the damage of a smash attack. And at the beginning of some of these phases, you'll notice that I'm just like kind of running around and trying to clear the field or in the case for the third phase, the kicking phase, I try to just slowly bleed out some counterattack energy. The reason for that is that Robo-Rat has 8 seconds of invincibility at the start of each phase. So the unintentional hits that I took from the lasers and from the kick cost me a bunch of health, and that really sucks. But it doesn't really cost me any time because I couldn't have damaged the boss anyways. Whenever possible, I like to start the AI loop and just gain control of the fight because with any of these bosses, if you let them get free and get the upper hand, it gets really difficult to get things back under control. So that's why I just like to hit them as soon as possible and get things rolling, but getting hit at the beginning of a phase is not really a big time loss. It's time that would have been ineffective anyways. Alright, bonus stage, break the jet. You don't get anything as a reward. Nothing really to mention here. But coming up next is Rash's biggest weakness, and this is the only thing that really makes him balanced in this game, because he's just absolutely incredible. He's so good in this game. But in this stage, you have 2 attacks. You have basic jab, and you have the super. So if you push the jump button in this stage, you transform and you basically clear the entire screen. And you can use that a limited number of times. You get 2 per credit, or sorry, 2 per life. So if I use these 2 and then die, I would get 2 more. And they're the Battletoads icons in the top. And you can collect a few more throughout the stage. I think there are 3 that you can collect. No, 2. 2. Yeah, I think just 2. But what makes this so rough for Rash is that on successful attack, Rash is at frame disadvantage compared to the enemies. The recovery of his lawnmower attack here is really, really terrible. And the other bad thing is that his weak jab extends his. Let me make sure I have the right wording. I think the right word is hurt box. It extends his hurt box more than his hitbox. It might be in reverse. Basically, when he attacks, he becomes more vulnerable. So every time I push that kick button, the range where an enemy can stand to hit me is extended. So I can't just stand in place and mash the attack button and wait for enemies to walk into it. If I push the attack button early, an enemy will kill me. Like, literally, if I get hit by an enemy in this stage at all with Rash, I die. 100% health. So, to safely kick enemies, I have to wait for them to walk inside my damage radius and hope that they don't hit me before I get to kick them. Because that way the extension of my hurt box, or again, whichever phrase it is, I always get them mixed up. The displacement isn't a factor because they're well inside that range anyways. But the combination of that really bad weak jab and the really bad recovery on the lawnmower means that there are several places in this stage where I need the enemies to simply not attack me when they have an opening. And if they choose to attack me, I just die. And it's awful. And I've found some positioning, some setups that make it a little bit easier and a little bit more consistent. But it's still just the fact that if an enemy chooses to kill me, he will. So for most of the really bad waves, I just use Rash's special. You would normally not use a special here if you're Pimple or Zitz, because their jabs are really good. And you can do a smash attack redirect on them. And that's essentially the same concept as in the traditional beat-em-up stages, where you normally can only use a smash attack on an enemy that's near death, but you can hit nearby enemies with that smash attack. So like right here, I'm going to start a smash attack on a weak enemy in the lead, and all of the enemies that fly up afterwards are going to get hit by the lawnmower. But again, if any of those enemies chose to hit me, they would have. And again there, if those enemies attacked me the moment that my smash attack ended, they would have killed me. As a result of using the super and the triple black grog wave, I don't have 2 to use here, which I normally would. So to survive this wave, I have to kill 11 out of 12 with that smash attack, which is the maximum that you can kill. If 2 black grogs are left, depending on your position, you are put in an inescapable death scenario. So there are just a lot of really unfortunate parts in this stage with Rash. In this playthrough of this stage was exceptionally fast. It was really great. Everything went in my favor. But it's not uncommon to enter that stage with Rash and lose an entire credit, simply because you landed an attack and died afterwards because the enemy killed you after he killed you before you had control again. So that stage really sucks with him, and it's single-handedly what prevents him from being the overwhelming best character in the game. He is just at such a tremendous disadvantage in that stage. I mean, it's so bad that in a 3-player run, you would prohibit Rash from ever attacking, because Rash attacking puts the entire team at danger. So stage 5 is a super, super hard stage. The game throws like some really tough combinations of enemy types and aggression levels at you, so that, I mean, this is a bad wave for this sentence, but so that they generally reach you at different times. And they take really tough angles to deal with. So this stage was a major source of problems for a very long time. And the route that you see here now is the result of many years of revisions. This stage is particularly good about just giving you a whole lot of resources when you don't need them. Like that blue box was on screen for about 6 waves beforehand. And if I had used it in those previous waves, I wouldn't have had it for the waves where it really matters. That box I didn't necessarily need for them, but I used it because grunties you can realistically only kill by booting them. So you pick them up and throw them on the ground, or you do a bunch of damage, and then when they're crawling away you kick them, and that instantly kills them. But when they're crawling, especially the weak grunties, like the ones that lack the mace, here's another example, you throw them and kick them and he's gone. They can be killed with the box when they're on the ground very easily. And it saves 2 kick animations, which is a lot of time. So sometimes I opt to use a box just to skip animation times, and other times I use the box and other items just to try and control space better. So this is another major disadvantage that Rash has over the other 2 Toads. For some reason, when fighting these general vermin, when he approaches with a dash attack, he can get grabbed from halfway across the screen. And the general vermins have a really huge grab range, but for some reason with Rash, the moment that you start a dash attack, they can pick you up from basically anywhere on screen. And I've had some pretty incredible examples of this, some really great videos. I still don't really know what causes it, but it's a major source of frustration. Because you can have an absolutely perfect stage and then just get grabbed every single kick by a general vermin, and that's all she wrote. But so far so good here. These bowling ball sections are just a nice break for me. So I will point out that this stage has been going on for, I don't know, like 3 minutes or something. This is a very long stage. So far this entire part is about the entire length of stage 1 or stage 2 or half of stage 3. We haven't gotten any health. So on max difficulty, you only replenish health between stages if you are below 3 health. And if you're below 3, it brings you up to 3, which is enough to survive the first tick of a jab from the weakest enemy in the game. And then you can recover health beyond that by eating flies whenever they show up. Oh, see, there we go. Alright, weakest enemy in the stage jabbed me twice, and I lost 40% health. There's the rest of it. So that, oh god. So those mace grunties are programmed to attack on the frame that you're vulnerable. So they can read if you attack cancel, and they will attack sooner. So you have to attack within the first, I think, 3 frames after you become vulnerable, or else you're instantly killed. An electric mace grunty on max difficulty, I believe, does 100% damage with jab string. I was at 50% health and between 2 of them. I missed my kick, and that was it. So that's a pretty good example of what this game can offer, and why it's so extraordinarily hard to get a 1 credit clear in this game, especially on hardest difficulty. Yeah, it's really incredible. That's why I like this game so much, too. So, we took the stick here to help us get through the bowling ball section, and because there's a really staggered wave here. There are 2 blue rats and 3 golds staggered, and it's really tough to control this space without using the stick and whiffing. When you're swinging the stick, you're completely invincible, and it doesn't use ammo unless it hits something, so it's just really great to stall. And then we have this wave. And, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful setup. I forgot it. I wasn't sure if I was going to get hit in this run or not. But this wave is traditionally where Rash will lose a life. That initial first 2 hits, the first loop on the green rat, is very, very tight. And normally when you try and do the first kick, he'll grab you out of it, and if he grabs you there, you're guaranteed to die. So, yeah, all things considered, this was a really great stage with him. So Big Blag, he's going to be 4 phases in this fight. And he starts each phase with 7 seconds of invincibility. So, I let him roll around because that happens to stall exactly the amount of time that I need. And I damage boost after the second roll so that it sets up the loop properly. So the small phase, after you hit him 5 times, after you damage him 5 times rather, he will grow. And then when he's grown, after you hit him 5 times, he'll shrink. But there's enough hits done on one of the hits in the big form that you can get 6 hits. That's not true for the small form. So we set it up again this way. I was trying to just do the full combo from the phase transformation. Once he transforms from large to small, you get a free hit, and sometimes you can just combo him throughout all of his iframes and then for his 5 hits afterwards, and never lose control of the fight, but I missed the attack because that loop is incredibly tight. So yeah, if you hit big phase 6 times, and you hit small phase 5 times, with a smash attack for every single hit, then he will die on the last hit of the big phase. If you miss 2 smash attacks, that is, you do a dash attack but it doesn't transform into the boot, which is the result of a spacing problem, then you have to do another small phase and another big phase before he dies. So that's what we call the Big Blag quick kill. It's killing him in 4 phases, killing him at the end of the second big phase. But it is ridiculously hard to get the quick kill, and it's even harder to get an optimal quick kill where you just lock him up in the combo the entire time. So I will happily take that result any day. Alright, and that takes us to stage 6. It's just a really long auto-scroller. Every toad functionally is the same here. The way that the gun behaves is the same for every toad. There are 4 different guns that you can get in this stage. Power-ups spawn periodically on a timer throughout the entire level. And they spawn in a set sequence every time. So as long as I control the waves and clear them at approximately the same time, I know exactly what power-up I'm going to get and from where on screen. And there are a few places in this stage where the power-up cycle does reset, it does start over, and it guarantees that you have certain power-ups for certain waves, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to clear them. So a lot of this stage is just manipulating where the power-ups are going to spawn, when they're going to spawn, and using them wisely. The other thing that's important here is, much like stage 4, I have these super tokens. things up next to my health. I'm going to be saving all of them. Actually, I think Rash has to use one of them in a place that's unintended. But I want to save all of them for one specific extended wave later on in the stage that is legitimately impossible to handle sometimes. One thing, while it's obvious to see, that I'll point out right now, is that the pea shooter in this game isn't reliable. It doesn't always fire in the direction that you're pointing. So the bullets will oscillate. And on average, they shoot straight down the middle. But they fluctuate where they actually shoot. And the other thing is that this game uses an 8-way joystick. So you can only aim in the 8 directions. And it makes it really hard to shoot certain targets, like a moving power-up or a missile. So something that I have to do sometimes is, since Rash will continue to shoot when he's turning, I have to just continuously change directions between, say, down and down left to shoot at a really steep vertical angle. So aiming in that manner is very difficult and takes a lot of practice. And one of the other issues here is that you can't move while you're firing. So shooting things while dodging around is very tough. If you're holding the attack button, then all of your directional inputs will aim. And if you're not holding the button, then left and right will move you along the ship. Yeah, one bullet away on top. So the main two advantages that Rash has here, because believe it or not, despite all of the Toads being functionally identical here, Rash has a tremendous advantage. Oh man, I forgot he missed that! Oh, that's so good. So again, because the bullets are random and this the falling debris is random there, actually, the two happen to line up exactly in an inconvenient way to prevent me from grabbing that power-up the first time through. And right here is really tricky. Hitting these drones when they're at particular angles can be very tough because of the way that the bullets shoot and because of our limitations with aiming. So the goal is to survive the red drone wave with the pea shooter until the first 3-way spawn. And after that we can generally stave them off. The spread gun is super good. Unless you get a distribution like that where they disappear on all sides at once. And the laser is really great. It doesn't have reach to extend to the corners, but it makes you turn faster, so it's much easier for handling the flanks. But yeah, Rash is really good on this stage because he's the fastest, and his movement speed actually does translate here. So you can kind of simulate being able to move while firing by tapping the fire button like this. And Rash gets a lot more movement out of the taps than the other Toads do because he moves quicker. So I can keep the same fire rate, but cover a lot more ground than the other Toads, which is rather important. And the other thing that I touched upon briefly in the Pimple Run was that Rash and Zitz have different animation times for their stunned animations at the beginning of the boss fight. And it allows me to get more damage on the zero-width cycle of Robomanus. So that Ratcaptor I delayed slightly so that I would get the flamethrower, and I'm going to delay even longer here. The main reason is that I want to spawn this 3-way before the fight begins. This boss fight is one of the reset points, power-up reset points. So ordinarily you're supposed to have the pea shooter here, and then the 3-way spawns right now. But by delaying long enough during the Ratcaptor section, we can start the fight with a fresh 3-way gun. And that is the earliest that you can possibly kill Phase 1 of Robomanus. Normally he would fire a volley of missiles from the top and then the bottom, and then a ring of fireballs. And skipping the fireball section puts us really far ahead of pace on the power-up cycle, and puts us in a really good spot damage-wise. So I budgeted for 2 supers in the Robomanus fight. The first one I used when the burners were closing in the previous phase, and the other was to kill the drones and collect the flamethrower. My fight was actually so fast that it put me in a bit of a tricky spot because I was ready to use the super to clear out the drones before the flamethrower power-up had spawned. So I had to actually manually collect the flamethrower. Ideally, we end this phase after the double throw in the middle, and we did. And the last power-up we collected there was a 3-way that spawned on top. Our whole goal, the overarching goal here for this fight, is to kill the hands wave before this power-up spawns. Since the flamethrower and the laser can't reach the hands, the game won't spawn them. Well, rather, the game will still spawn a power-up. But instead of giving you the laser, it'll give you the 3-way. So we want to make sure that we are fast enough in this fight that... Oh, my bullet! I fired one stray bullet to the side to try and grab the 3-way, and it was the wrong trajectory. That sucks. So yeah, we want to finish the hands wave before it changes our laser spawn to a 3-way spawn, so that we can use the laser on Robomanus because it does a bucket load of damage to him. And it puts us really far ahead of the power-up drop cycle. So if you don't get that, you would normally be getting this flamethrower when he changes from phases 5 to 6. So when he changes from the closed brain dome to exposed brain. And instead we got the flamethrower really, really early. Or really, really late, rather. I mean, he's very low health when he got the flamethrower. This fight with Rash was the fastest fight with Rash that I'd ever had. If I remember this right, I think the fight that I had with Zitz was the fastest Robomanus fight I've ever had overall. But this is an extremely good fight. The positioning of the power-ups has been in my favor. And the management of the power-up cycles has been perfect. So this is his last phase. We want to kill him with this 3-way. The next spawn is the laser. Our general benchmark for killing Robomanus is... once this text changes after the 1% defense power remaining thing, that's the indication that he's dead, so I don't have to shoot him anymore. But yeah, our benchmark is for him to be dead and for the ending to be playing before the laser spawns. That's the indication that you had a near perfect fight. So, yeah, this was a super good run with Rash. I mean, it's not without mistakes. No run is going to be without mistakes in this game, just because it's simply not possible. But it was really great. I mean, I died once, and that death took about 4 seconds. I died in a manner of like 10 frames. And then the respawn time after that. So this is a 38:25. That is the fastest time on any difficulty that anybody's ever had, from what I've seen. So to get a max difficulty 1cc in that time, you know, without credit feeding to refill my supers in stage 4 or stage 6, is really, really outstanding. And that makes him the fastest Toad out of all 3 of them, which is unbelievable. So, yeah, I'm really proud of Rash. He did a good job. He's a very tough character to use, for sure. You have to have a really firm handle on the hitboxes and his limitations. Otherwise, you can get yourself into some really, really bad situations. But he has a lot of potential, and he's a very fun character to use. I used to really hate using him, but he's grown on me quite a lot. So, that's that. Let's see. Again, I mentioned it before, but when I enter my initials in the leaderboards here, you'll notice that the table is not very full. It's because I've been having some battery issues, and all of my old scores got erased at the first battery failure, and then I filled up nearly the whole leaderboard table again. And then I had another battery issue and it wiped the whole thing again. So now I think after this run there were only four scores on there. That kind of sucks. But yeah, this is the only 38 that I've ever gotten with Rash. This was a PB by 45 seconds. This run was just a tremendous outlier. It was incredibly good. And it's highly unlikely that I will be returning to try and improve that. But we'll see in a few years if my board still works, and if I find any improvements, I might get back to it. But right now, that's it. And 926 is an incredibly low score, which is a sign of how fast I killed Robomanus. So that was incredible. All right, well, here are the settings. I hope you enjoyed the run.